Hey class, I hope you have had a fantastic week. Happy Friday. A little stormy here today, about 75, 80 degrees. And I know it's cold in other areas of the country, but a little stormy here today. So I have all your grades done for the week from Module 4. And I ask that you please take a look at my feedback. Look at those rubrics, each element of the rubric. I always try to give some tips. Even if you made 100% on the assignment, please take a look at that feedback, especially the feedback on the assignment, and then the feedback that I've shared about future assignments. If you've not looked at the final, please take a look at that. Don't wait to that last week. Don't think you can just throw this together. This is not an assignment where you just simply copy and paste the milestones into a paper and submit it for a grade. Not that at all. The flow has to be good from beginning to end. It all must connect from one paragraph to the other. The layout, the organization, citations, references, everything must follow APA. It's got to have a good flow. So take a look at the rubric for the final project. Read the instructions closely. There's a lot of information there. And so what I recommend on that is look over it one time, scan it, and then go back and focus. Take all the other stuff out and focus on those areas that you'd like to share, those topics that we discussed in the beginning that you shared with me. You can change your topic. I'm okay with that. You don't have to email me and ask me. Just change it. I'm okay with that as long as it follows those instructions in the rubric closely. You got to do that. And I want you to look at those examples that I've shared on the paper. Go look at the examples, the links, all those resources that the university has provided in the course to help you with APA. It's important. We can't just write a paper. I know sometimes it seems like maybe the emphasis is too great on APA, but I'm telling you, when you get in the field, it doesn't matter if you're going to be a police officer, work in corrections or human services, if you're going to work in Homeland Security, emergency management, any of those areas, no matter what you do, you are going to be responsible to write reports, to write effectively, and to get your message across in as few sentences as you can. And that's the thing about APA. It demonstrates that you have the ability to understand some of those problem-solving techniques that we use. It demonstrates that you have the ability to read, to research, to write in a recognized form. APA is used throughout academia, and it also is a good way to practice on writing so that you're better prepared when you leave the university. I know some of you are close to graduating, others maybe just getting a start or mid-level, but either way, it doesn't really matter. It is good practice, and if you take those shortcuts now on your homework, on your assignments, on your papers, if you take the shortcuts and you don't take time to develop a good paper that focuses on the material, on the assignment, follows that APA, you check grammar, do the references and the citations correctly, etc., you're really going to pay for that when you get out of school. I promise you. I've seen it. I've seen it. I've had to suffer through that. Very difficult for me, going back to college at 35 years old and having to work a career and raised a family, living in this whole world of public safety where we have our own nomenclature, we talk a certain way, we say a certain thing, and we live fine in that world. It's okay. But when you get into academia, we have to learn to write and read a little bit differently, and it is challenging to do that. So just focus on that feedback. I've given you those tips and links, and hopefully that'll help you. Now, great job this week in week 5. You've done a fantastic job. We're exploring the ethical obligations to victims. That's the focus, crime and victims' rights this week, both in our discussions, our blog, and our paper. So in our discussions, you're doing a fantastic job doing that. Sharing those key points. We're looking at the ethical obligations of law enforcement professionals to victims. What are the legal obligations in their state, if there are any. You may be in the state where we don't have any any real legal obligations to the victim, but there's sort of precedent nationally that we do support those victims as much as possible. You know, the thing is, many of you talked about professionalism and being honest and ethical and open and fair and unbiased. All those things are important whether there's a law or not. It really helps the officer with the investigation. It really de-stresses the victim, helps them to better understand the process. Sometimes what happens with victims, an incident happens, we go out there, we write the report, we investigate, maybe 3 or 4 weeks later, a detective who was overloaded with multiple cases makes contact. It just seems like forever, and it does take a long time. Sometimes I had a gentleman tell me yesterday that the incident took place and it's been a year so far. The court date keeps getting pushed back. It's been a year. He's not heard anything. No one's reached out to him or anything to support him, and that's because the department that is dealing with the case is very small, and they cover a huge area, but they're small. They don't have a lot of manpower, and so that's just the best they can do. So they make contact with him on scene, and try to work with him on scene. They don't hear again. Doesn't hear anything again. So it doesn't hurt to pick up the phone and maybe spend a day, an afternoon, a morning, something, calling those victims, reaching out to them, and just let them know, hey, we're still thinking about you. Do you need anything? Here's where we are with the case, or we're still investigating, something to reach out and ease their mind, and let them know that we are here to support them. And again, crime, there's so many crimes that it's difficult to do this sometimes, but it is important to take the time and reach out to those victims and work with them and try to support them, whether or not there's a constitutional amendment in your state. Certainly, we're looking at the consideration of federal legislation with support to crime victims, and I've not tried to influence the decisions on that, the discussions, your thoughts on that, but, I guess my question would be, if we do have federal legislation, is it really going to change anything? Is it really going to enhance or increase to support the crime victims? That's something to think about. Certainly at the state level, the Constitution assigns health and safety to the states. And then, perhaps that's where it should be. And then we should work with those non-governmental organizations to really support those crime victims when necessary, if we're overloaded. I think they tend to do a good job with those agencies that use them, and it's certainly something you might want to think about in your discussion, your blog, and also your paper. So our short paper this week, Milestone 3, the theories, values, and duties. It's a short paper that we're really taking a look at all three of those. What's the ethical obligations to those crime victims? So in your paper this week, identify the ethical theory you would rely upon to address this dilemma. And I want you to pay close attention to those ethical theories. You've got to go out and look for those. There's some links that I provide in the course, but I really want you to go out and look for those and think about those ethical theories that's applicable to your paper, that's applicable to your situation. In this case, you'll need that on the final paper. I see a lot of students write about, do that final paper, but they never mention ethical theory. They don't involve ethicals. I never see those key words with ethical theory. So take a look at that and make sure you include that in your short paper. It's a good practice for that final. How do you separate personal morals from ethics? Why is it important? Sometimes we have our own personal morals. We look at things differently, doing right, following the rules. And then we have our own morals that, we may not agree with that, but we have to set that aside when dealing with crime victims. It could be based upon religion. It could be released upon, any number of things, such as how we grew up, our culture, and our own society. Those are the things that we often forget. We're such a melting pot. Everyone has different ideals and backgrounds, and then we, sort of have this baseline in the United States, but we're all different, and so sometimes we have to set aside what we believe in so that we can support those crime victims, make sure that we do the right thing, and that we are ethical in our support. And then when is it appropriate to let your morals guide your actions? That's huge. That's huge when we're dealing with the public. Our morals may be a little bit different, so we may have to set aside our morals and sort of think and investigate and do our research about someone we're working with and make sure that we're providing that service to them, that we are ethical, and that we do the right thing. And that's the huge thing, is when we have our morals, we may disagree with something that's happened. We may not like how someone's living. They may have 4011 tattoos on them. Who knows? But we still have to be genuine, and we still have to work with them. I have a family that I respond on quite often. We're over there a lot. It's a small road, and all the family lives on this road, and I respond to them a lot. And what I don't like how they live. They, all of this family, no matter which house they're in, they, I don't know, live off the system. They're all into methamphetamine, and they've done that for 20 years or better. Every one of them, they'll tell you, hey, I've been doing meth for 20 years or better, and other drugs. And so every time I respond on them, I've developed a connection with that family, even though, there's a potential for danger there. There's some things that have happened, and there's a potential for danger. And although I always have my guard up when I go in that home, and I'm always making sure I have an exit plan, etc., should things go bad, I show respect to that family. It's always yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am. I don't judge them. I don't ask them about anything in their house, or, why the house is always dirty, or, I don't touch on any of those things whatsoever. If I see something that needs to be forwarded up the chain, then we'll do that. But otherwise, I just deal with this family respectfully and let those morals guide me, and try to be ethical and not judge them, and work with them and help them solve their situation. And sometimes if it's dangerous situation, I try to separate and deal with both ends of the family, the two parties, if you will, but I try not to judge. I just try to deal with the situation and find balance and stay away from all the other things that could get us in the weeds, so to speak. And because of that, I've developed a rapport with this family, and so we tend to deal with situations there on the scene easily at that time. And so I think that's one of those areas where you have to let your morals really guide your actions when dealing with those situations. Take a look at that rubric. Take a look at the examples that I've given you on your final paper. Use that APA. Just check your grammar. Use Word or spell check, some other program that you have to check your spelling. Now, a couple of words of caution. I got to go because we're about to run out of time here, and it's been nearly 15 minutes. You're tired of hearing me talk. But be careful when using the Word option for APA. There's an option in Word where you can automatically insert the citations and the references. What happens with that is you've got to change the font. Your entire paper, running head, citations, references, must be all black, Times New Roman 12-point font. It doesn't do that. You've got to change it, and you got to center it and all those things that I've given you in the examples. So be careful with that, and I suggest you just get used to typing it in yourself. It takes a little more time to do it. Once you get used to it, you'll be pretty quick. So keep up the great work. I'm proud of you. I want you to have a great weekend. Find a day to just take some time with you and your family this weekend. I know you get tired about this time. It's next week will be 6 weeks. You get tired. I get it. Been in college a long time and worked a long time. So I understand, but take some time to just go breathe and get away from your schoolwork. Keep up the great work. Thanks for taking time to watch the video. If I can ever do anything for you, I want you to call me, text me, email me, day, night, holidays, weekends, and I'll do everything I can to support you and help you. Have a great weekend.